Welcome to another episode of the Stephen A. Smith Show, coming at you at the very least 3 times a week over the digital airwaves of YouTube and, of course, iHeartRadio. As always, I want to stop and take a moment to show my love and appreciation to all of my followers and subscribers. We've now eclipsed 699,000 subscribers. Can't thank y'all enough for the love. Keep it coming, and I'm going to keep on coming. And please make sure to go to iHeartRadio to listen to the show in your car or whatever audio device you may have. Go to iHeart and check that out. And by the way, if you want to continue to like and follow the show, just click the bell, and boom, you'll be the latest member of the Stephen A. Smith Show family. While you're doing that, please make sure to not forget to pick up a copy of my New York Times best-selling book, Straight Shooter, a memoir of second chances and first takes, now in paperback. So go to straightshooterbook.com. Once again, that's straightshooterbook.com to get yourself a copy. Since I am in studio, I'll make sure to take phone calls before I get on out of here for the weekend and give some advice as well. The number to call up, as always, is 888-727-5303. That's 888-SAS-5303. Now, let me get started because we've got a couple of NBA items to get into, all right? Mainly that ass-kicking that we saw last night in Boston, Massachusetts. The Celtics opened Game 1 and sent a message to the Dallas Mavericks about who they are in this championship series. The game featured the return of Kristaps Porzingis, who came off the bench to spark Boston, scoring 18 of his 20 points in the first half. Jaylen Brown set the tone and led the Celtics with 22 points, while Jason Tatum added 16 points en route to a 107-89 beatdown of the Dallas Mavericks, okay? Here's the deal. I'm looking at it from this perspective. I got the Dallas Mavericks winning this series. Let me just put myself on Front Street. I swear to Lord, I wish I could change my mind right now. I'm not going to do it, but I damn near want to. For one reason and one reason only, Kristaps Porzingis. Yes, Jason Tatum set the tone. He was hitting shots, he was attacking the basket, had a spectacular dunk, had a big-time block of Kyrie Irving. I get that. Jason Tatum didn't need to do much last night because the Boston Celtics had 7 different dudes that hit 2 or more three-pointers in this game, which was an NBA Finals record. You don't see that. Of their 16 three-pointers, divided by 7 different dudes that hit three-pointers. So everybody was hitting 2 three-pointers. We got to take that into consideration. It's not about that. Everything changed the moment Kristaps Porzingis came into the game, through a roaring ovation, by the way. He's 7'3", y'all. So he's going to cause problems defensively. When you're driving to the lane, Kyrie Irving, when you're driving to the lane, all right, Derrick Jones, when you're driving to the lane, PJ Washington, Kristaps Porzingis is going to be there because he's 7'3". So that's problematic in and of itself. Here's where it gets worse. Porzingis hit 3s. Plus he hit 2s, posting dudes all over the place, shoving them aside and shooting turnaround jump shots. And on top of it all, when he wasn't doing that, you know what he was doing? Blocking shots. And he was helping out on defense, which caused some problems for not only the players that I mentioned, but for Luka Doncic as well. And so I look at it from that standpoint, and I said at the beginning of the season, before it even started, if Kristaps Porzingis and the Boston Celtics are healthy, they win the championship. I picked the Mavs to win this series because Kristaps Porzingis wasn't supposed to be healthy. They said he had an injury similar to that of Kevin Durant, where it was a calf injury, it was irritated, and then ultimately he came back after weeks and Kevin Durant tore his Achilles. So I said, you know what? He wasn't a strong lateral mover to begin with. Boston isn't the greatest pick-and-roll defense to begin with. You put Kristaps Porzingis in those situations with Luka and Kyrie, it could be a problem. That's how I looked at it. And then this guy came out and showed us that the MVP wasn't him, the MVP wasn't Jaylen Brown, the MVP wasn't Jason Tatum, the MVP wasn't Derek White or Drew Holiday or anybody else. The MVP was the Boston Celtics medical staff, because this brother looked big time. He looked like he hits 100%. And if that's the case, the Dallas Mavericks have no chance. This series will be over in 5. They can't beat the Boston Celtics in a best-of-7 series with a healthy Kristaps Porzingis. I don't think that's possible. I really don't. I thought he was going to be hobbled at the very least. That was not the case. It was not the case. Now let's get to the Dallas Mavericks, and most notably the struggles of Kyrie Irving, because it's worth talking about. Did y'all know that Kyrie has now lost 11 straight games to the Boston Celtics? His last win against his former team was just over 3 years ago when he was a Brooklyn Net. And last night, To be quite honest with you, it just wasn't a good look. Kyrie finished game 1 of the finals with just 12 points, shooting 6 of 19 from the floor, 0 for 5 from three-point range, and was a team worst minus 19 for the Dallas Mavericks. Look, it's not a crime that this happened, but I think we got to be honest about it. Kyrie Irving was rattled by that Boston Celtics crowd. They booed him loudly. They were spewing venom in his direction. And Kyrie is not a bad guy. We all know that even though he works through a lot of things mentally and emotionally, the fact of the matter is that he's a decent guy who wouldn't mind being liked. And when you look at the Boston Celtics fans, that'll never happen. A, because you're an enemy of the Boston Celtics as long as you're wearing the opposite uniform. Just ask Draymond Green about how they treated him 2 years ago when he was playing, he's still with the Golden State Warriors, but when they were playing against the Celtics in the finals, he was a bit rattled in the first couple of games in Boston. Ultimately overcame it and played like a damn all-star in that game 6, no question about it. But let's make sure we understand the importance of what we're talking about here. Kyrie Irving is one of those dudes that will be religiously hated by the Boston faithful. Why is that the case? Because when you look at Kyrie Irving, he's the guy that said he was staying as long as they'd have him, and then left like a thief in the middle of the night to join the Brooklyn Nets. They didn't forgive him. He comes back as a member of the Nets, and what happens? He steps on a leprechaun on the parquet floor. He flipped the bird at fans. So he knows that he was wrong, as he acknowledged that, and it's not a crime, and we all move beyond that. Everybody's going to move beyond that but the Boston faithful. Why? Because the more they boo you, the more unproductive it makes you, the more they're going to up the ante because they want their Celtics to win the championship. So somehow, some way, Kyrie is going to have to dig within himself and figure out how the hell to bring his A game against the Boston Celtics because they're going to need it. The Dallas Mavericks are going to need it if they're going to beat the Boston Celtics. Make no mistake about that. Coming up, Will Smith is out with his latest film, Bad Boys, Ride or Die, with Martin Lawrence. But it's all forgiven with Smith since the Oscars slap of star Chris Rock. We'll get into that. I'm getting into that. But first, the Lakers are meeting with UConn head coach Danny Hurley this weekend about taking over in LA. Could this be a good fit? I'll get into that next with the one and only Adrian Wojnarowski, the ultimate insider. Up next, right here on the Stephen A. Smith Show. Back with more in a minute. All right, everybody, you know what time it is. It's time for Stephen A.'s Weekly Picks. If you're a sports fanatic like myself, then you can't just watch the games. You need to be a part of it all. So how do I do that? I play PrizePicks, of course. That's what the hell I do. PrizePicks is a skill-based real money daily fantasy sports game where you select 2, 3, or even up to 6 players and choose if they'll have more or less than their projected in-game stats. It takes less than 60 seconds to make your picks and puts you right in the middle of the game time action, all right? Pick the stats of all your favorite players, Luka, Kyrie, Ohtani, or even Asia Wilson. Then sit back, watch, and chill. And if you go to PrizePicks.com right now and use promo code SAS, you receive a 100% deposit bonus up to $100. That is absolutely no joke. So go to PrizePicks.com, type in my initials SAS for a first-time deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. Today, however, I will not be selecting any players or sports. I gotta go off topic just for this one time, all right? That's right. I'm selecting either more or less than 3.5 people a day, asking moi, yours truly, to take a selfie. Who the hell asked this question? Who came up with this? Are you kidding me? 3.5 a day. I get 3.5 requests every 3 hours, minimum. It's at least 20 to 30 selfie requests I get per day. Per day. I don't understand it. I'm just a personality who used to be a reporter. I really don't get it. Can't sing. Woo, woo, woo. I can't do that. Can't rap. I ain't trying to. Damn sure I wasn't good enough to play professionally in terms of basketball or anything like that. I don't understand it. But I am loved. So I guess that explains it. That's why the answer is more, as in way, way, way more than 3.5 requests for a selfie from your boy. But I'm a man of the people. so it doesn't bother me at all. Welcome back to the Stephen A. Smith Show right here over the digital airwaves of YouTube. Now, let's get to the Los Angeles Lakers head coaching search, please, that is now focused on UConn head coach Danny Hurley. Hurley recently won back-to-back NCAA basketball championships and has a top 5 team returning this season. He's reportedly been the obsession of Lakers general manager Rob Pelinka, whom he'll meet with this weekend along with team owner Jeannie Buss. The Lakers, according to ESPN's very own Adrian Wojnarowski, are looking at a potential deal that would be significant in its length and salary. Now, Hurley has not made a decision about leaving UConn, but he did inform the university of his interest in taking the job. Woj will join me momentarily, but I wanted to give my take on this Lakers situation really quickly. Danny Hurley deserves this job if he wants it. Rob Pelinka, according to the exceptional reporting of Woj, has been obsessive in his pursuit of Danny Hurley, and rightfully so. He's a 2-time national champion. He's the best in the game right now. We've seen other coaches come onto the pro ranks, the Brad Stevens of the world, the John Calipari's of the world, and others, and have some degree of success, including Billy Donovan. Let's not forget him and the job that he did at the University of Florida. I'm not going to forget the job that Darvin Ham did, because he did go to the Western Conference Finals his first year. He did lose lose in 5 games to Denver in the first round, but both losses were to the Denver Nuggets, led by arguably the greatest player in the world in Nikola Jokic. So we got to take that into consideration. How much more can Danny Hurley do? I don't know, but I know if anybody deserves the shot, he does. And I'll leave it at that, because I got to get to my next guest right now. Joining me to talk more about the Lakers coaching search is the man who broke the story for ESPN, the man who breaks most stories when it comes to the National Basketball Association. I used to be an NBA insider, ladies and gentlemen. Let me say this in all honesty. I was never this man. My next guest, senior NBA insider, recognized for breaking the news, reporting on the league over the past decade plus, one of the best in the world. He's the host of the Woj Pod and the Woj Report, both on YouTube, by the way. Please welcome my buddy, my partner in crime on NBA Countdown, one of the best NBA insiders in the history of this profession, the one and only Adrian Wojnarowski. What's going on, big time? How are you, sir? How's everything?
Stephen A., I'm great. Good to be here with you.
Man, thank you for being here. Let's get right to it. How big of a possibility do you think it's going to be that Danny Hurley is going to be the next head coach for the Los Angeles Lakers?
Stephen A., there's a real possibility, and there's traction in these conversations between Hurley and the Lakers. The job is his if he wants it, and I think that's been clear to him for some period of time here. And it's really just been the last few days where now he's going to formally meet with the Lakers. He told UConn that he was going to do that. He told his players that. And he flew to California on a Thursday night, and today's Friday. And so he's going to meet with, as you mentioned, Rob Pelinka, Jeannie Buss, and sit down with them and see what this could look like. This is not done. He's not made a decision. It's certainly at the time that we're talking, but he is seriously weighing this. And the NBA has always been an ambition of his, and the kind of job the Lakers is and what it represents and what it means in the coaching fraternity, you could make a case it might be the most pressurized, most famous, most storied seat maybe in all of coaching, and maybe not just basketball. So I think all of that appeals to Dan Hurley, and he's looking hard at this.
To get back and to give folks on the outside some insight to all of this, we've heard numerous people reporting that there were numerous candidates, most notably our colleague at ESPN, JJ Redick. The inside info is that I want to let America know that when I was thinking about that, the one and only Adrian Wojnarowski would come over to me and say, wait a minute, it's not quite going down that way, Stephen A. Let me hook you up with the intel, and that's exactly what you did. Paint a picture for what the situation has been leading up to Hurley being in this position. Was it always him? Was it numerous people like a J.J. Redick? Was it really nobody at all? Was it really all about Dan Hurley? Break that picture down for my audience, please.
Stephen A., the other candidates who they've talked to are viable, legitimate coaching candidates, not just with the Lakers, but will be with other teams. But Rob Pelinka identified early that Dan Hurley was the coach that he wanted to hire, but he didn't know if he'd be able to get him. He couldn't just spend 2-3 weeks pursuing Dan Hurley and hoping to get a chance to get down the road the way they have here at the end. And so he has interviewed other candidates. And if Dan Hurley says no to this job, then it's going to circle back to the J.J. Redicks, the James Borregos, among some others. Sam Cassell, who's an assistant with the Celtics, is interviewed. James Borrego, there's been different variations of interviews in this. Borrego, they did an initial wave of candidates while they're waiting to see if they could make any headway with Hurley, where they brought in guys and they got to know guys that they hadn't interviewed in the past. Remember, they just did a coaching search a couple of years ago.
Right.
So they had met with some of these guys. They did sort of an informal, like more of a get to know you with a bunch of guys, including J.J. Redick, including James Borrego, because there just wasn't familiarity. They brought Borrego back for a more of a sit-down, formal, all-day, let's really dig into an interview. They hadn't done that yet with JJ, and I think they would have if the Hurley thing didn't start to accelerate here. And again, if Dan Hurley turns down the Lakers or they just can't come to an agreement, again, this could come back. JJ Redick is a coach or a coaching candidate that the Lakers have had a lot of interest in. They preferred Dan Hurley, which you could understand. He's, two-time back-to-back champion. He's been coaching a long time. There's a lot to be intrigued about with Hurley. So, we've been reporting about interviews and permission the Lakers have gotten from other teams to talk to candidates. But that's, as far as the Lakers are concerned, those were candidates that they were talking to, that they were getting to know and moving down the road, only if they couldn't get Dan Hurley.
What exactly are the Lakers looking for? And I only ask that question, Woj, because, again, listen, I understand why the Lakers felt the need to make the move with Darvin Ham. I knew Darvin Ham, and remember, you and I were standing together, and I knew Darvin Ham's days were numbered when I saw what Anthony Davis said in the aftermath of Game 2, losing Game 2 in Denver, and was talking about how disorganized. I was like, oh, my Lord, that's bad sign for any coach. So I knew it then. But what exactly are the Lakers looking for in their next head coach? Crystallize that for us.
The Lakers want to build out a program, a way of doing things from top to bottom organizationally, and giving Hurley a lot of latitude to do that, and to partner with Pelinka, the front office, in really allowing him to kind of redefine to them of what a Laker, it would be a Laker Hurley player, style of play, system, all of those things that they think Dan Hurley can bring, and what they've seen him do at Connecticut. You look at Billy Donovan going to Oklahoma City, and listen, he inherited a team that was ready to win a championship. Hurley wouldn't be doing that. Quinn Snyder in Utah took over a team that was in the lottery, drafted Rudy Gobert, Donovan Mitchell, developed them, became a viable Western contender. You've seen college guys come in. The ones who've had success have kind of had a partnership with the front office, to build out a way of doing things. That's what Pelinka wants to do with Hurley. He is certainly, you've seen players just really develop at UConn. Donovan Clingan, the 7-footer, who will be one of the top few picks in this draft. Stephon Castle in 1 year at UConn. We can go down the list. They've gotten guys better. They have maximized the guys they have. And you've seen a system in place there that has dominated college basketball. They lapped everybody this year. Yeah. They won a national championship where they outscored their opponents in this tournament, Stephen A., by 140 points. Wow. John Wooden never did that. And so the level of dominance is, has Rob Pelinka's attention. And so what he wants is, instead of just going team year to, a team, is, again, building out a program. A coach who can get Austin Reeves and Rui Hachimura and Max Christie, improve those guys, drafting well, developing those guys, but you're LA, and you're always going to have access to, either through trade or free agency, to great players who want to come here. You have to have those players. You know who they are, Stephen A. If you're going to play for a championship, we can list I don't know, one of 6 players, 7, 8 players.
Yep.
You better have one of them where you're not competing for a title. Maybe the list is even shorter than that. So what Pelinka sees is this history in LA of, Jerry Buss had Pat Riley and Jeannie Buss had Phil Jackson. He sees Dan Hurley as that next legacy coach for the Lakers. That's what he's banking on here.
That's where I was going next, because we know LeBron James is there. We know Anthony Davis is there, and a little bit younger than LeBron James, so he's considered the future, even though some of us wonder how much time he has left at times, because he's always injured, even though that wasn't the past case this year when he played 76 games. There's also the Pelinka, Jeannie Buss element, the Laker Nation situation, and you look at a coach and you hear the word development. That's not something that's synonymous with Laker Nation. And
it's
so
win now, win every year.
That's right. It's win now, win every year. So if you're a Rob Pelinka and you're a Jeannie Buss, how do you answer that question for the doubters, especially when people wonder, what role did LeBron James have? Did he have a role with J.J. Redick? Does he have a role with Danny Hurley being a target for Rob Pelinka now? How do you answer that as the ultimate insider that you are?
I know people want to believe LeBron James is in the middle of these coaching searches. And I'm going to tell you he's not. And I know people don't necessarily want to accept that at the surface, but it's been the case, and it's been the case in the other searches. Now, the first search Rob Pelinka did, you look back, and they could have had Ty Lue. They couldn't get there on a contract. They didn't offer him enough years. I wouldn't necessarily say enough money, but certainly enough years. They didn't get it done. He goes to the Clippers as an assistant. Monty Williams, they didn't get there with him. He goes to Phoenix. They hired Frank Vogel. I don't think there's anybody who would say, hey, LeBron was really pining for Frank Vogel to be his coach. I don't know that they knew each other, had a relationship. Now, they won a championship together. Same with Darvin Ham. The search started out in one place, Juwan Howard. Juwan stays at Michigan and eventually finds its way to Darvin Ham. He takes the job. I think especially in this case where LeBron is in his career, he's really left it to them. And Rich Paul, his agent, they've been very consistent with this. Anthony Davis is the one who we really need to talk through things with about how the new coach impacts. If we're talking about how he impacts a player, it's how he impacts AD. And I saw AD a few weeks ago in LA, and he and I talked about it. This was before the Hurley stuff. But just theoretically, Anthony Davis would like to have, and the team wants to have, the organization wants to have him on the same page with the new coach. Like, he wants to know, what's it going to look like? What are the actions that your system can put me in? And I think they're excited about Hurley potentially would be bringing, I think, a really sophisticated college system. I've talked to a few NBA head coaches who, as they're preparing for the draft, are watching a lot of UConn tape because they're watching Klingon and Castle. Right. And they didn't see it there. They're not spending a lot of time watching regular season college basketball. They are really taken with the kind of actions Dan Hurley's running, how innovative it is. And more than one of them have said to me, this would really translate to the NBA. It's not common that you see NBA coaches looking to take some things from a college system, but that's gone on here the last couple of years. And so, listen, they want Anthony Davis to be on the same page with this, but you're right, Stephen A. It is going to take, I think people need to see it to believe it in LA, that you are taking a little bit of a longer term approach here in terms of a program and building something out for the long term. And I think people may be cynical about that until they see it in action, because a lot of people are just going to say, hey, if this guy doesn't win in year one or year two with this team, we're going to be on to another coach. And I think the best way Hurley can protect himself against that are the years on his contract and the money, because you're making it a lot harder to just fire you if you are owed,
50, 60 million.
Name the number.
That's
Name
right.
the number. Right?
Listen, you brought up the word cynical. A couple of questions more on this subject, and that's it. Bronny James, projections, he could be a second-round pick, the son of LeBron James. The Lakers have the 55th pick in the draft. Danny Hurley is known as a guy that knows how to develop talent, which is what people are speculating has LeBron James so excited, etc. What level of credence do you give to that?
A lot. Because if you're the Lakers right now, I don't know that you can say to LeBron James, hey, I guarantee you by the end of the draft and free agency and the building of the offseason roster, that we have a team that's a championship favorite. Now, we know how loaded the West is. We don't have to list all the teams. We know Memphis is. We keep forgetting about Memphis. You're going to have John Morant back and Jaren Jackson Jr. And this really talented team back in that Western mix. We don't have to go through all the names in the West. It is hard to just say, hey, LeBron, we're sure we have a championship team next year. You're going to try to put the best roster you can together. But what you can say to him is, it has been a dream of yours and an ambition of you and presumably Bronny to have a chance to play together. And what better situation if we take Bronny at number 55 and we have Dan Hurley and his development system in place to give Bronny the best chance he can to develop into an NBA player. And, part of what you do when you're an organization like the Lakers, and if people say, hey, this is, special treatment, this isn't, well, yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
There's special treatment all over the NBA. And I will say this, I saw Bronny James a year ago before the heart episode that he went through last summer that curtailed his freshman season. Stephen A., he was at I saw him in Portland, Oregon at the Nike Hoop Summit where you practice all week with the best American players. They play the best international players. He belonged there. He fit. He was outstanding in the practice sessions. Go back and watch the game. He held his own and did really well with all the best players in his class.
Woj,
yeah.
I've never seen Bronny James play. And I'd avoided it on purpose because I had so many critics of LeBron James looking to take aim at him that I thought it was so unfair I didn't want to watch him until I absolutely had to. And then he had the heart ailment at USC. So I said it's really unfair to judge him at this particular moment in time. So I really, really appreciate that intel. But I guess what I'm wondering about, if this guy ends up in LA with his dad, well, first of all, it shouldn't be any problem for LeBron James to commit to a 3-year deal after that. It should be no problem whatsoever, okay? But you often wonder about the level of scrutiny. So this is not an insider question per se. I'm asking you as somebody that's covered the NBA for decades, that talks to so many players and coaches and executives, that knows this league inside and out. What do you think that's going to be like for LeBron and Bronny if they're together in Los Angeles? I'm just talking about in terms of the cynicism. That's what I'm asking you about.
Listen, this is a results league, and it's a results-driven profession. You're going to have to show value, but you're not asking Bronny James to come in to the league or to the Lakers and be a rotation player. He's like almost any other 19-year-old, 20-year-old player who's a one-and-done. He's going to spend a lot of time in the G League. Their G League team is right there, same facility, the South Bay Lakers. And so, you could see a world where, let's say the Lakers draft him and he goes through preseason and, opening week, LeBron and Bronny play their 1 or 2 games together. And then, he comes in and it's there's obviously going to be a lot of attention and it'll be an incredible moment. But then he's probably back off to the G League, and that's where he's going to play and develop. And now listen, who knows? Maybe he moves along quicker and he can be on an NBA rotation. I don't know that that's what it's going to be. But typically, if you are being drafted in the 50s or the 40s in the NBA, you're starting, your fight is through the G League and getting to the NBA. Your time may not be till you're 23, 24 years old. We can show you a lot of examples of those guys. But where he is and where he was, I would say, a year ago coming out of high school, he was on par with a lot of other guys who you saw as, potential role players in the league. This is not outlandish. And anyone who shapes it that way, I think is not being fair. He was away from the game for 5 months. And I'm sure there's not just the physical coming back, but the mental coming back from what he went through. That takes some time. So again, I do think though, so if you're the Lakers maybe you can't say to LeBron, we are just positive we have a championship team around you. That's not easy to do. But this is something we can do for you. And Dan Hurley helps us maximize that situation. So I do think this is a significant factor in Hurley's candidacy.
Very last question on this subject. Mike Wilbon, our colleague on NBA Countdown, expressed some reservation because you're a college coach coming to the NBA. Pelinka's there. What level of real decision-making power is Danny Hurley going to have, particularly working in concert with Rob Pelinka, if indeed he takes the Lakers job? How do you answer that question for us?
Yeah, Rob Pelinka is still going to be the decision maker, but the fact that he's committing to that he would be committing to Hurley, committing the years and the money, you're saying is I've got to make this work. How do I make this work? I've got to find players who fit this coach, and I think that's part of, again, what putting a program in place in. Miami, when Miami is out and you see them bring in guys who are undrafted and guys who have been overlooked other places, they know what a Heat player looks like. They know who can play for Eric Spoelstra, and they have a tremendous ability in that organization to find those guys, develop them. The Lakers want to be able to do that, and so there's going to have to be a level of trust on Hurley's part with Rob Pelinka in that front office. The head coach isn't out there evaluating and scouting, and he may have some understanding in the next couple drafts of a lot of these young players because he's seen a lot of them. But you're ultimately leaving it to your organization. So you do have to be, and that's why you have to be going into this job, be really talking about who are the kinds of players and this kind of style we want to play and the skill sets that are important. But this is an adjustment for any college coach. And when you're in college, you're the GM and the coach. You're not the GM in the NBA. And there's lots of other. Hurley's going to have to adapt in a lot of ways. How he deals with officials, how he deals with fans, how he deals with players. You have to understand when you're going to the NBA, and the guys who've done it well, Billy Donovan, Brad Stevens, Quinn Snyder, I think all of those guys understand in college, the head coach may be the star. The players are the stars in the NBA. I think John Calipari, Rick Pitino, they had a harder time accepting that they weren't the star, and players aren't going to respond to that. But I think the head coach can be the driver of the culture, the environment. And I think one of Dan Hurley's great gifts, and I think he got it from his father, and he watched his dad as a high school coach for a very long time. He could coach his players very hard. But part of why he could was they knew he cared. They knew he was going to be there in their lives. The relationship's different in the NBA. It's going to be more transactional than it is a high school coach or a college coach. But if you are authentic, in my experience, if you are authentic and you're not trying to be anybody else, it doesn't matter if you were an ex-player or a non-player, if you're a man or a woman, or if you're black or white, players will respect that you are prepared, that you can get them better, you can help them win, you can help them get another contract. They don't care what you look like or sound like. If you can help them do that, I think Hurley fits that criteria.
You know what?
But he will have to adapt. He will have to adjust. He said to me one time in the past, we weren't talking about the Lakers job, we were talking about the NBA though. He said, I understand that I don't talk to my son at 21 years old the same way I did when he was 10 years old. I would understand that about the NBA, but there's going to be some trial and error with that too.
You've leaned on your extensive experience. I want to get a bit personal here. I've known you for years. You've been covering the NBA for a long time. But one of the greatest honors of my career are the people that I've been blessed to work with. You are one of those people. You are the best in the business, my man. And it's such an honor to work with you on NBA Countdown and work with you at ESPN all the time. I want you to remind my audience of how long you've been covering this league and what you've been doing, where you worked at before you got to ESPN, how long you've been doing what you've been doing for ESPN. Talk to us.
Well, first of all, that means a lot, Stephen A. You know how I feel about you. I've been at full-time on the NBA when I went to Yahoo. I was at the Bergen Record. I was in northern New Jersey. I was a suburban newspaper columnist. I went to Yahoo in 2006, and I did the NBA there for 10 years, and now I'm on my, seventh year at ESPN. But, listen, we go back to when I started covering the NBA when, Byron Scott and Jason Kidd were with the Nets, and Rod Thorne, Jeff Van Gundy was the Knicks coach, and those were fun times to cover New York sports teams. And I saw the John Calipari arrival in New Jersey, and you saw the missteps of somebody. John in his second year got to the playoffs, and he did an outstanding job. They got swept by the Bulls, and I think Jordan's last stand, and I think back when it was best of 5. And then in his third year, he had a bunch of injuries. He had alienated everybody in the front office. And so the minute he struggled, he was going to get fired because he hadn't built any relationships. John didn't adapt to the NBA. And I think Dan Hurley potentially would learn from some of the mistakes of those before him. But again, I'm not going to sit here and say, hey, this is easy and seamless.
Right.
But he's as good of a basketball coach as I think there is out there right now.
But staying on you, how much are you still enjoying what you've been doing? I talked about the Woj pod and everything else you're doing. How much are you enjoying what you're doing at such an elite level?
Listen, I love it. This is all I've ever wanted to do, Stephen. All I ever wanted to be was a sports writer. I wanted to be able to be at a newspaper where, like, they would let me take overnight trips to cover something, and I could put a dateline on my story.
Right.
On those old little Radio Shack. No one is more surprised than I am of how this has all turned out. It's the only job I ever wanted as a kid. It's the only profession I've ever wanted to be a part of. And I still love, like, every day, you know this, Stephen, every day this job is different. Every day there's something coming down the road that's a little bit different. And I still love working at it. I've loved covering the NBA. I love dealing with the players. I love dealing with the coaches and the GMs and the agents. And I love all the people around it. They're great. There are lots of great characters and storylines to cover. People have a tremendous appetite. I think I always tell people my job really changed in 2010 when LeBron and Chris Bosh went to Miami. That changed this job fundamentally. Because free agency became such a different beast. And then all of a sudden, teams clearing cap space, all the little deals around the NBA that were going to lead to the big deals. There was such an appetite in those. Chris Paul wants out of New Orleans. Carmelo Anthony wants out of Denver. Player empowerment's coming. Players are starting to move the pieces around the chessboard. And it became a different game to cover. The game within the game became its own industry. And for me, that recognizing that then, that there was just this tremendous appetite in all of that, changed my career. Like, Stephen A., you and I both started as our goal, I think, when we both started was, what was the big job in our profession? You wanted to be a big city newspaper columnist. We grew up idolizing the guys in New York. You and I, we grew up reading Lupica and Harvey Araton and all those guys, Mark Kriegel, and you wanted to be them. And then the business started changing and it kind of moved towards specialization. And then you took it to a place none of us ever imagined. But I would just say, like, no one's been luckier than me in this profession. There was nothing about my background or how I grew up. My dad worked in a factory for 30 years, about a mile and a half from ESPN in Bristol. He worked at a factory, ball bearings plant, and his second job was working the cash register at a liquor store, or he worked second job at a shoe store with a friend of his, for a friend of his. And so there was nothing about my background that would have ever suggested that I could do this. And I had so many great mentors and people along the way who kept giving me opportunities. So I hope I can do this for as long as they'll have me, because I know when I stop doing it, I'll miss it, because it's the only life I've ever really wanted.
How much has social media changed the job for you, whether it be in a good way or a bad way?
It changed it in a good way when I remember being at Yahoo. I remember the first big story I felt I broke. It was pre-Twitter. It was Greg Oden's knee injury, unfortunately for him.
In Portland.
And I got word one day that it was a knee fracture. It was right early in his rookie year, and that he was going to be out for the season. And I confirmed the story. I confirmed the story. I wrote the story. I put it on Yahoo's website. And I'm waiting for someone to see it and notice it. Like, unless you're refreshing the site, you're probably not seeing it. But there wasn't Twitter, or at least I wasn't on Twitter. And to think of how it's gone from that, literally waiting for the AP like an hour after I posted it to acknowledge it was there, to you're now putting that out in a moment, right, in social media. And so the 24/7 nature of the job, social media has impacted that. That certainly changed it. And so if you were breaking news, I always felt early on when I started covering the NBA on a full-time basis, How do I get Jerry West and Donnie Walsh and Arn Tellem, who was the big agent then? How do you get any of those guys to return your calls or know who you are? What I found early was if you broke news, they started noticing you.
That's right.
And so you'd break news and you'd break a little bit of chicken and the egg. How can I break news if I don't know these guys?
Right.
And then but you did over time. And so social media started to change it because there was this immediate scoreboard of what was everybody saw right away the stories, and that changed it. But I think certainly there's a downside to everything. But for me, I have nothing to complain about. No one's been luckier in this profession than me, and I know how hard it is to make a living in this business, and I see what's happening in our industry now. Like people that I came up in the business with, you came up in the business with, Stephen, who are so talented and so gifted and have done such incredible work. And I do think there's fewer good jobs out there, fewer platforms than when we were coming up. And so, again, I just acknowledge that I've been incredibly fortunate to do this and to do it at ESPN and to work with people like you and Michael Wilbon and Adam Schefter. I still get inspired being around the best of the best. That inspires me every day because you better raise your level at our place, or you're gonna be you stand out of place if you're not trying to really do this at a high level.
I'll close by saying this, by revealing to my audience something that you may not have even known from us. At ESPN, if it's football, it's Adam Schefter. If it's basketball, it's you. They've come to people like myself, Will Bond, and various others years ago. And they say, we want to make sure, no matter what it is, most of the time, obviously everybody's got their sources. You guys have been around for ages. But we want to make sure on certain stories that you don't say anything until it goes through Woj or until it goes through Adam Schefter. And all of us said, absolutely. We know our lane. These are the dudes. Adrian Wojnarowski is definitely one of them, the absolute best in the business, man. I'm proud of you. I'm happy for you. I really thank you for being on the show. Before I let you go, when do you expect a decision on Danny Hurley for the Lakers?
I think it's going to be relatively soon, Stephen A. Whether that's Saturday, Sunday, Monday, I don't think this goes very far into next week.
Honored to have you on the show, buddy. Looking forward to seeing you Sunday in Boston. By the way, my prediction for the Mavs didn't look too damn good last night. I didn't know Porzingis was going to be healthy.
Took Myers down with you.
That's right. I didn't know Porzingis was going to look like that, Woj. I'm thinking he can't do this. He's got a KD injury for crying out loud. He was awesome. I said, damn, I'd have never picked the Mavs if I knew if he was healthy. I didn't expect that, Woj.
Well, listen, I think this is still going to be a long series. Yeah. You've seen Dallas punch back in the playoffs when they've lost. They've looked not good in game ones. I think Kyrie and Luka come back, and the game 2 is down to the wire. I don't see another blowout.
Appreciate you, my man. To my audience out there, my sister Carmen loves me. She actually loves him more. Loves him more. Would love anything for Woj. You take it easy, buddy. Thank you so much, man. Take it easy.
Thanks for having me, Stephen.
All right, buddy.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. Let's get to the WNBA, okay? Where it's time to put some weekly shine on the star players in the league with Stephen A's WNBA Player of the Week. That honor goes to the Las Vegas Aces superstar, A'ja Wilson. You know I got a soft spot for that girl. She came through for me in the Celebrity All-Star game on ESPN a few years back in Chicago when the NBA collaborated with Mike Wilbon to rig stuff against me. She was the only one that showed up. I always loved that girl. But anyway, I digress. On Wednesday night, this woman dropped 36 points, 12 rebounds, and 6 steals to help the Aces beat the Dallas Wings 95-81. Wilson became the first player in WNBA history to have at least 35 points, 10 rebounds, and 5 steals in a game. She's also the first player with at least 35 points and 5 steals in multiple games. And this year, she also became a New York Times best-selling author. I would know a little something about that, by the way. I, too, am one. Welcome to the family, A'ja. Welcome to the family. Anyway, she released her first book, and it was entitled Dear Black Girls. Obviously, if you know anything about A'ja Wilson, you know that she's philanthropic. You know that she's very conscientious. You know that she's about uplifting a bunch of people, but especially young black ladies in this society that we're living in today. A message like that, the kind of message that she conveys, the kind of example that she sets, I cannot say enough about her. Have you ever seen this woman play? A'ja Wilson is the true face of the WNBA. Caitlin Clark could potentially be that one day. And obviously she's been box office, but A'ja Wilson is the one with the credentials. She's the one that steps on the court and delivers championships, a back-to-back champion, favorite to three-peat for crying out loud. She gets on the court and she annihilates competition. She is clearly the superstar that exists within the WNBA. She sets a shining example, and no matter what smile you see her wearing, no matter what outfit you see her walking into the arenas with or whatever, when this young lady steps on the basketball court, she is all business and she takes no prisoners. There's a tweet right up here, right now. This was courtesy of the one and only LeBron James. Quote, the absolute best, with an abundance of exclamation points, because she is the true gold standard in the WNBA. A'ja Wilson, she's that big time. Congratulations, continued success moving forward. By the way, speaking of the WNBA, staying with it, don't forget to check out two Eastern Conference powerhouses meeting up this Saturday. That's when the undefeated Connecticut Sun hosts the 9-2 New York Liberty, led by Breanna Stewart. The Sun aim to build on their 9-game winning streak, and the New York Liberty have won 5 games in a row. So make sure y'all check that out. Before I get on out of here for this particular segment, let's switch to some softball, okay? Because now let's quickly turn our attention to that, because it's necessary, because the Oklahoma Sooners beat the top-seeded Texas Longhorns for a record 4th straight NCAA softball title. The Sooners won their 8th title overall, all under Coach Patty Gasso, and moved into a tie with Arizona for the 2nd most World Series championships, trailing only UCLA. Oklahoma's senior class finished with as many national titles, that would be 4, as NCAA tournament losses, which was 4, 41-4 over the course of their career. What was their record in that span over these last 4 years? I think their record was somewhere like 235-15. That's what we're talking about when we're talking about the softball team at the University of Oklahoma. This girl's a big time. Congratulations, ladies. You know, I was out there, trying to swing softball. I struck out twice. I'll leave it at that. Way to go, y'all. Way to go. Coming up, there's a new Bad Boy film out. Will it do as well as the last ones? Is all forgiven with Mr. Will Smith since the slap? Should it be forgiven? I'll get into all of that and a little bit more up next. Don't go anywhere. You're watching the Stephen A. Smith Show. Be right back. Let me take just a few seconds to make sure everyone knows, all right? My favorite time of the year is finally here. The NBA Finals have arrived. And the best part is, PrizePicks has got you covered. That's right. While all the big games are happening, PrizePicks is going to help you cash in, y'all. You see, PrizePicks is a daily fantasy sports app where you can select 2 or more of your favorite players and then pick more or less on their projected in-game stats. But PrizePicks is not just basketball. Oh, no. It has something for every sports fan, okay? From the MLB and the WNBA to tennis or the NHL and everything in between. You can pick Ohtani, Angel Reese, Juan Soto, and Sam Bennett. All in the same entry, by the way. All in the same entry, okay? I make my picks and submit early, all in less than 60 seconds. And get this, PrizePicks will match your first deposit of up to $100. So that's right. Go to PrizePicks.com. and use code SAS, that's my initials, of course, in case you didn't know, for a first deposit match of up to $100. That's code SAS when you go to PrizePicks.com. Pick more, pick less. Guess what? It's really, really, really that easy. Welcome back to the Stephen A. Smith Show right here over the digital airwaves of YouTube. Before I get to my next subject, a subject that I really, really want to talk about for a second, especially with the black community, I want to show y'all a few of the pictures I've been blessed and fortunate enough to be a part of over the years. This is me with the great Aaron Judge, right here before I embarrassed myself internationally by throwing out that awful first pitch. Yes, I can suck it up. This is me at a Big 3 tournament game in Philadelphia. The one and only LL Cool J to my right, the one and only Ice Cube co-founder of the Big Three. To my left, right here, the great Denzel Washington, and yours truly. When we went out to an event together and we hung out one evening. Still love that brother, greatest actor I've ever known. Me with the great LeBron James, the basketball court before a Lakers game. My man Snoop Dogg at a game. I think this one was in Golden State. Me with the great Aaron Rodgers. He is a bad man. This was at a Warriors game during the NBA Finals. You see the one and only Floyd Money Mayweather behind me. But all of these pictures that I've taken throughout the years, one of, if not one of the greatest photos I've ever taken, was this right here. This is me with the one and only Will Smith while he was promoting his movie Concussion many years ago. I bring that up because I wanted to get to the latest installment of the Bad Boys franchise, Bad Boys, Ride or Die, which debuted Wednesday. It's the second best reviewed film after Bad Boys for Life. That's what they're telling me. It's also the biggest film for Will Smith since his infamous 2022 Oscars slap of the great comedian himself, the one and only Chris Rock. Pre-sales for Ride or Die are behind that of Bad Boys for Life, of course, which hit a franchise high opening of 101 million worldwide back in early 2020. Domestic projections for Ride or Die were at 50 million, but that reportedly simmered to 40 million. Could the lack of pre-sales be because people have not forgiven Will Smith for that? That slap right there? How much you want to make a bet it does? And this is why I wanted to have this discussion with y'all. Because I want to emphasize that right now, as we see Will Smith and Martin Lawrence on the circuit promoting this new film, once upon a time, you couldn't find a bigger fan of Will Smith than me. Martin Lawrence, you can't find a bigger fan of Martin Lawrence than me. Ladies and gentlemen, in all likelihood, I'm going to go see Bad Boys, Ride or Die. Because I'm such a huge Martin Lawrence fan. And believe it or not, I still will never stop being a Will Smith fan. I'm not surprised at all that pre-sales have simmered. It wouldn't surprise me at all if it ultimately plummeted once all is said and done. And you know why I feel that way, ladies and gentlemen? Because I think that I'm speaking not for everybody, not for most, but at the very least millions of people out there when I say what I'm about to say. I'm not nearly as interested in seeing Will Smith in the movies than I am of seeing him doing an actual sit-down interview with somebody to explain why he did what he did. Now, I want to emphasize this. Will Smith apologized just days after that infamous slap on March 27, 2022 at the Oscars in writing. Then he went on his social media platform, I believe it was Instagram, 4 months later, at which time he apologized again to Chris Rock, articulated that he reached out to Chris Rock's people and and was told that Chris Rock wasn't ready to sit down with him. That's not what he wanted to do. And if you don't believe me there, hear for yourself.
I've reached out to Chris, and the message that came back is that he's not ready to talk, and when he is, he will reach out. So I will say to you, Chris, I apologize to you. My behavior was unacceptable, and I'm here whenever you're ready to talk.
Fair enough. Normally, under certain circumstances such as this, as egregious as this was, as much as Will Smith deserved to get his ass kicked for what he did. Being a bully, somebody that's 60 pounds at least heavier than Chris Rock, I don't think he would have done this to Mike Tyson. I don't think he would have done this to Jamie Foxx. I don't think he would have done this to Snoop Dogg or 50 Cent or somebody like that. He knew who he was doing it to. And that's the personification of a bully. And in my opinion, he deserved to get his ass kicked because of that. Back then. But it's not just about Chris Rock. See, as upset as I am and still remain to that degree, that's because Chris Rock is my friend and I know him. But that ain't the only reason. The biggest issue that I have a problem with, and I'm not saying or advocating any kind of violence like Will Smith deserves that now that all of this time has passed. But at the very least, the black community especially deserves seeing Will Smith sit down. I don't care if it's with the Breakfast Club. I don't care if it's with Oprah. Because you know it ain't going to be me, right? You ain't going to sit down with me. Because some questions going to get asked, okay? But I don't care who it's with. You got to provide an explanation as to why that happened. It can't be that you went to therapy and you learned the error of your ways, or you've addressed some of the demons that were plaguing you mentally and emotionally and spiritually. That's not good enough. And even though we weren't the ones that were slapped literally, ladies and gentlemen, figuratively, the black community was slapped. Will Packer, a big-time producer who happens to be black, was also the first black individual ever assigned to oversee the Oscars. It was a live event, his biggest live event of his career, nationally televised on ABC, reaching over 200 territories worldwide, according to numerous reports. When Will Smith did what he did, that didn't just hurt Chris Rock. It hurt Will Packer's production. That became the story rather than the extraordinary excellence his production talents exhibited for the world to see. And instead of us talking about that, we were talking about this. So it wasn't just Chris Rock. It was also Will Packer. And it was also every black producer that's out there that's aching for an opportunity to get their shot at producing a program like the Academy Awards. That's what Will Smith did. Thereafter, did you see the movie Emancipation? Will Smith was sensational. Will Smith could have won an Oscar for that. Who is standing next to Will Smith? That's a black director. That's a black producer. His name is Antoine Fuqua, one of the best in the world. You ever see Olympus Has Fallen? You ever see Training Day? You ever seen Antoine Fisher? You ever seen the Equalizer movies with Denzel Washington? I can't even tell y'all about the movie that's coming out on Michael Jackson. Oh, my Lord. That's Antoine Fuqua, one of the best on the planet. He might have won an Oscar, but Will Smith did what he did. And that movie came out on, I believe it was on Apple, the next year or so. Residue from the infamous slap still permeating through in the minds, hearts, and souls of so many people in Hollywood, but especially the black community. Black excellence. It's all over the place, ladies and gentlemen. Black folks don't play. In front of the camera, behind the camera. Producers, directors, writers. Talent everywhere. All over the place. It was on the verge of getting exponentially more noticed. And then Will Smith did that. And all of a sudden, that became something that was attached to so many instead of their excellence. Antoine Fuqua is incredible. Will Packer is incredible. The staffs they have working for them that they've assembled are incredible. Will Smith thought about none of that when he did what he did. He didn't think about the fact that Denzel Washington was just a few feet away from him and had to talk to him and get him calmed down because he was screaming, "Keep my wife's name out your effing mouth." Tyler Perry was right there. Black excellence all over the place. Either indirectly connected, directly connected, or inevitably attached and tarnished by Will Smith's actions. When we use the word forgivable or forgiveness, that's for Chris Rock to deal with. It's his call. He could have had the man arrested that night and insisted to the LAPD that that not be the case. Could have pressed charges thereafter and insisted on not doing that to Will Smith, not making the incident any bigger than what it was. Yes, he came out with his own flick for next fix, got about $20 million for it. After tax, he probably walked home with about $6 million. But Chris Rock is damaged. In the day and age of mental illness or traumatic incidences that affects one's mind and psyche and what have you, yeah, you might see him at Knicks games. Yeah, you might see him still going about the business of performing on tour or doing his job or handling his business. Chris Rock will never get over that. Ever. Will Smith apologized. I'm not saying he even has to apologize. I'm saying that while I watch him and Martin Lawrence promoting this movie, and I'm quite sure the reason he hasn't addressed it is because the studios don't want him to, and there's an obligation that you have with them, all fair. I get it. But somewhere along the way, he has to sit down and talk to the black community. You can see all the white people around Will Smith all you want to. Black folks have loved and revered this man for decades. He was the closest thing to perfection, as his friend Charlie Mack once told me, for decades. Everybody makes a mistake. This is not hatred. I love Will Smith still. But you got to have a conversation as to why you did that. And when you're apologizing, and when you're getting emotional, and when you're thinking about all the lives or the people that you've affected, it's primarily us as black people who have loved and supported you and watched you go on an international stage and slap one of us in the face and tarnished an historic event for one of the great black producers of modern times in Will Packer, possibly costing yourself and Antoine Fuqua an Oscar for emancipation along the way. I'm not going to say what you did to the comedic community. Hell, Jim Carrey spoke about that along with various others. We know you wouldn't have smacked Ricky Gervais, Bill Maher, Bill Burr, or a host of others. We know you wouldn't have done that. No apology necessary. I'm just saying, a lot of folks ain't get over that. A lot of folks find it hard to just go to the movies to watch you. I'm one of those people. And I never missed a Will Smith movie. Hitch, Concussion, all the Bad Boys movie, from the first one to Y'all with Gabrielle Union, who, by the way, should have been in 3 and 4, by the way, along with a host of other things. I Am Legend, Independence Day, Men in Black 1, 2, and 3, Will Smith, you're phenomenal. Phenomenal talent, phenomenal actor, phenomenal individual. You lost your way one night. We need to hear that from you. I'm sorry. That's what I need to do before I look forward to seeing your movies again, more than seeing a sit down. Let me go to the calls to get on out of here for the weekend, because I got a lot of stuff to do with the NBA Finals and beyond, so that's the way it is going to go. Number to call up, as always, is 888-727-5303. That's 888-SAS-5303. Let's go to Ernesto in Houston. You're live with Stephen A. What's up, Ernesto? How are you?
Hey, Stephen. Pretty good. My question is, for the upcoming NFL season, how do you project the Houston Texans, not only in the AFC, but do you see them as like a top 5 team? And
I don't know if I'm going to go. Hold on, let me stop you. I don't know if I'm going to go as far as top 5, Ernesto. I've got them as one of the top 3 teams in the AFC. I'm going with Kansas City.
Nice.
I'm going with Baltimore. And then after that, I think it's up for grabs between them, Cincinnati, Miami, the Jets, Buffalo. I'll even throw Cleveland and the Pittsburgh Steelers in the mix. That's how I got them. And of course, we can't ignore the AFC West and what's transpiring there right now, particularly with the Los Angeles Chargers. I'm sorry, now that they got Jim Harbaugh as a coach. So that's where I'm at with it. The Houston Texans are in the mix. You got C.J. Stroud. You got Stephon Diggs there now. You got the weapons that you have available. There's no question that they can make some noise. We'll see.
Definitely.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. No problem. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, man. Take care, Ernesto. James in Fargo, North Dakota. You're live with Stephen A. What's up, man? How are you?
Hey, Stephen. So the Timberwolves captured a lot of interest and excitement with their playoff run and ultimately fell short, which was disappointing. Is the bigger disappointment, though, that they failed to win the title with all these bizarre subplots? The owner is trying to sell the team a month before a title run to a New York baseball player who blows it up. Coach gets his leg cut off on the sideline. No. First of all, respectfully, we wish Chris Finch nothing but the best. We hope that he heals 100%. But he wasn't dead. He hurt his knee. He was still at the game. He was walking around with crutches. He wasn't dead. So let's not act like the dude had a heart attack or something like that, okay? He got his knee hurt when Mike Conley Jr. ran into him. We understand that. But he was still there, even though somebody else was on the sidelines. He was behind the bench, but he was still coaching. In terms of ownership had been going on for a long time. Glenn Taylor foolishly valued his franchise in the immediate aftermath of COVID at $1.5 billion, when with Anthony Edwards ascending now, clearly there's a situation where they're worth double the amount. And that's probably why he wants to get out of this deal. I don't think he will. I think Alex Rodriguez and Mark Lowry signed an ironclad deal to get 60% of the franchise. They've already paid for 40% of the franchise, which was $600 million. They owed another $300 million. They tried to act like they didn't make it in time, but from what I was told, they had the money for the deadline, but Glenn Taylor didn't want it because he wants to maintain majority control of the franchise, because there's abundance of people in Minnesota that don't want him giving up that franchise. They want him to keep it for as long as he's alive, even though he's in his 80s. So I don't think that that's a situation that tainted their run in any way. I think the problem is that Anthony Edwards is a superstar. This brother's box office, I believe he is the heir apparent. He is coming. He is something special. Can they keep the pieces around him or elevate the pieces around him remains to be seen. But the biggest mistake that was made is that he opened his mouth and he talked to Kyrie Irving. I want him. Now, if you said to Kyrie Irving, I'm going to drop 40 on you, that's different, because Anthony Edwards can score on anybody. But when you sit up there and say, I want you, I'm guarding you, to Kyrie Irving, that was a colossal mistake. Kyrie Irving started off that series with momentum. Luka Doncic finished. And that's why they're in the finals and the Minnesota Timberwolves are home. It's that simple. All right? Let's go to Katie. You're live with Stephen A. What's up, Katie? How are you?
Hi, Stephen. I'm good. How are you?
All right. How's everything going? Talk to me.
Pretty good.
Talk to me. I'm listening. You're live on air. Go ahead.
So I'm from Chicago, but I'm currently in Reykjavik, Iceland. And you'd be shocked to find out in Reykjavik, Caitlin Clark is the talk of the town.
I'm not shocked by that.
I didn't know they paid attention to girls basketball over here, but I'm super excited about it. I used to play against her and Angel Reese in AAU, and I feel like, all the focus is on Caitlin Clark right now, and my girl Angel Reese from Chicago is not getting enough love. What do you think about the rivalry between them, and do you think too much focus is on Caitlin Clark?
Angel Reese is a terrific talent that I think is going to do really, really good in her WNBA career. At least on the collegiate level, and in all likelihood on the WNBA career level, she's not the player that Caitlin Clark is. She can't shoot from the logo. She can't pull up from the parking lot. She don't have that kind of ball handling skills and the sizzle to go along with her game. Angel Reese is a big body in terms of being a female basketball player. She will rebound, she will defend, she will average a double-double. She will come up with winning elements to contribute to a winning formula for a team. But she's box office because she waved her hands in front of her face to mimic Caitlin Clark while she was beating her down in the NCAA tournament en route to LSU winning a national championship. And then we saw how they would be revisited, and they'd have a rematch before Caitlin Clark and Iowa exacted their revenge on Angel Reese and LSU. So that's what we're talking about here. That's what transpired. But it's all a byproduct of the stardom that comes associated with Caitlin Clark. Caitlin Clark is believed to be the Steph Curry of women's basketball. Now, Sabrina Ionescu and others may have something to say about that when all is said and done, because they've got a resume and a reputation that is warranted in terms of them being worthy of more consideration than Caitlin Clark. But Caitlin Clark, this is her first year in there. And if the Indiana Fever get her a better coach and get better talent around her, who knows what she's going to be able to do. And you're looking at that, and she's clearly box office. They walk through the turnstiles to see her. They're not saying that about Angel Reese yet. She's not the only reason they watch the WNBA. The Las Vegas Aces, led by Asia Wilson, who's the real face of the WNBA, that has a lot to do with it. But Caitlin Clark is a transcendent figure that has generated profound interest in the WNBA. And as I've said on many occasions, it's nothing to complain about. Milk it. I mean, I shouldn't say anything because there are players that came before her that pounded that pavement, black and white. The Diana Taurasi's, the Sue Birds of the world, Breonna Stewart's of the world, Ionescu's of the world, Candace Parker's of the world, Lisa Leslie's of the world, Cheryl Swoop, Cynthia Cooper. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on of so many great players that came before Caitlin Clark, but they weren't able to take the popularity of the WNBA to this level. It's a different time. And if Caitlin Clark garners that kind of support, while it's fair to lament the fact that it should not have come to this, for the WNBA to receive this support, if you're getting it, focus on the fact that you're getting it and use Caitlin Clark to milk whatever you can in terms of cachet, popularity, etc., to get what you want out of it, because a rising tide can truly raise all boats. Got to get on out of here. That's it for this edition of the Stephen A. Smith Show. I hope y'all enjoyed the show. I got to get on out of here. Have a wonderful weekend. I got to get set to cover Game 2 of the NBA Finals in Boston. Boston's up 1-0 with Porzingis looking the way he looks. If that continues, I can't see the Mavs winning this series, even though I picked the Mavs to win in 6 because I assumed that Porzingis will not be this healthy. But my God, it's something to behold. Dallas Mavs have to be ready for Game 2 Sunday night. If they are not, they're in a world of trouble. We'll revisit that conversation, that portion of the conversation, on Monday. Until then, this is Stephen A. signing off. Peace and love, everybody. Have a blessed and wonderful weekend. God bless.